Bloober team actually delivered. Finally, after all of these years of them trying to make horror games, they finally did it. Silent Hill 2 Remake. The game that a lot of people have written off after we've seen all of these trailers and the gameplay showcases before the release, and I am glad we were all wrong. I personally don't look at this remake through rose-tinted glasses, trying to relive my childhood of playing original Silent Hill 2 game. Of course you won't. It's a remake and it's not the same game. It's never going to be. It's never going to replace that original game that was created in 2001. So it's a retelling of the same story from the original game from 2001 with a new gameplay, new perspective, and completely changed locations at some point. I was really a fan of Silent Hill 1, but somehow I never got to play Silent Hill 2. So before playing this remake, I went and played Silent Hill 2, the PlayStation 2 version. So I'm not held captive by nostalgia and I have pretty clear view of both versions of the game. The story is the same as the original game. You play as James and you get into the Silent Hill in search of your dead wife after receiving a letter. On the entry you meet Angela Orozco, and as you traverse through the city you meet other people like Eddie, Maria and Laura, who also search for something in Silent Hill. The old people were called by the city to get in, and they all search for different things and see different things. Every character in the game has its personality from the original game. Bloober also added some scenes in the conversations that weren't in the original game, and they actually serve the story well in this remake. And the topic of Maria comes back here again because they changed her costume and there's a lot of people dissatisfied with that, and she's still sexual. Like, in the way she talks and interacts with James, I don't think anything was done just to censor stuff. The tone of the game is still there, but not 100% of the time, because there are places in the game that are completely changed. It's mostly visible in the locations like prison and labyrinth, and where the original game had its like these places presented like how James' mind looks right now at this stage of the game. It was spooky and had some riddles that straight up made no sense to present this like James going down and down and down. But here it's like, it seems like both of these locations would get expanded and prison turns into shooting game, and labyrinth actually overstays its welcome, especially with the section with the cube. And as for a gameplay, the game takes on the perspective from Resident Evil remakes, over the shoulder camera, nice aiming, melee combat is more dynamic and requires to dodge often, and there is no like cooldown on dodge or anything, so you can dodge always, basically, where in the original game it was just tap one button repeatedly until the monsters stopped moving. And on the beginning it was pretty hard for me to get used to this melee combat, but after a while I also became a master of the craft, and I was just slamming enemies left and right, and I didn't even use my guns at some points. And the game seems to not give you that much of healing and ammo, at least on the beginning of the game. I was really struggling, whereas the PlayStation 2 version gave me so much ammo, so much medkits, that I was basically a walk-in hospital throughout the entire game. And this one seems to be harder on that front. Fortunately, the exploration of the last location really paid off, and I was able to be a walking hospital once again now in the remake. On the beginning of the game, we also have added sequence when we have to fix the jukebox and the vinyl. And we get this beginning sequence, and it allows us to spend more time in the town. We can roam around the town, unlike in the original game, where it seems like the game instantly throws you into the building, the woodside apartments, and you just go through the buildings and you rarely even go out to the city. And here, this addition on the beginning of the game is really great. It's a nice touch because it feels like you actually get to explore Silent Hill, unlike in the original game. But there are also two things that I want to mention, with no spoilers obviously, that in my opinion are way worse in the remake than they were in the original game. Two moments where I was really disappointed when playing. After you leave hospital and come back to the city in the middle of the night, there is no freedom. There is no find your way back in with a map, roaming at the dark, avoiding the enemies. Bloober turned this sequence into handholdy modern type corridor sequence where you just go through the tight spots and just arrive at the second part of the town. And the second part that I really didn't like, last location in the game, the otherworld version of it, it's also turned into handholdy straightforward run with no surprises, and for those who will know, they will know there is no looped door sequence, which was really cool and really nice in the original game. And playing this game, I really feel like on the beginning it was harder, and as you progress further in the game just becomes easier and easier. There are a lot of changes if it comes to the enemies, and there are, for an example, 2 types of nurses right now, as opposed to the 1 type in the original game. We have one with the pipe and the other ones with the knives. They deal more damage. However, there is no abstract daddy type enemies outside of the boss fight, which were present in the labyrinth and the last location of the game. There are, however, way more mandarins who will attack you now way more than they ever did in the original game. And to be honest, I never even got attacked by a mandarin in the PlayStation 2 version of the game. Here you will get attacked by them constantly, and they have this roar that they stun you with, and it's harder to escape from them. Really nice mechanic, I would say. And unlike the original game, this one actually managed to scare me a few times, because the mannequin enemies jump out of nowhere and attack you. And I know we can all agree jump scares are the shittiest tactic if it comes to scaring someone, but it actually made sense in this game for a change. They also expanded the boss fights. Right now those are full-blown boss fights and not just a 3-shot enemies. This was the boss fight in the original game, and right now I'm switching to the boss fight, the same boss fight in the remake. And I especially loved one boss fight. I will only say the one in the freezer closer to the end of the game. If someone haven't played the original game, won't have any spoilers here. As for the endings, they kept the same endings. Plus, they added 2 new endings. There's also New Game Plus, but they did change the requirements how you obtain the endings. So imagine my surprise when I was just playing my normal playthrough and I got unusual ending, because by sheer accident everything just lined up perfectly, up to the last choice that I made in the game. And yeah, the game itself is also longer than the original Silent Hill 2, and the original game took me like 10 hours to complete, and the remake went up to 15 hours. And that's a result of expanded locations and also more puzzles. Some puzzles being completely new and added, but others actually being kind of the same like the old version, but expanded and requiring more time to solve. Like for an example, 3-coin one on the Woodside apartments. Right now you have to flip the coin around and like set a few different scenarios to unlock the cabinet. Graphically, the game is really beautiful, but unfortunately it is not well optimized on PC. To make it run in stable 60 frames on RTX 3060, I had to mix low and medium settings with high textures and turn on DLSS on performance, because otherwise the game dips below 60 frames very often, and especially in a Woodside apartment location. It tends to stutter occasionally as you push through the locations, but never really stutters and lost FPS for me during combat, which is really good. Because combat is really dynamic and sometimes chaotic if you have more than one enemy especially, and it never really did stutter and lose FPS for me. It's kinda tiresome because this game also uses Unreal Engine 5, and it feels like almost no developer can just optimize the game on this engine, but everyone wants to use it because it looks so pretty. So if you are considering buying Silent Hill 2 Remake, definitely have to check if your hardware can run it. In conclusion, 1. Yes, I do recommend Silent Hill 2 Remake. It's a great game. Gave me some scares, especially with the mannequin enemies. But you must know that it's not a replacement for the original game. The original game had its feeling and it was a product of its time. I also recommend you to play the original game if you want and compare those two games, because it's not really that hard to make it run on modern PCs right now, especially with the enhanced editions of Silent Hill 2. And yes, the remake will never replace the original, because it's a remake. It's a completely different game, completely different experience, completely different perspective, made by different people. But you have the same music, because Akira Yamaoka actually came back and made music for this remake too. And it's a completely different experience, but it's really worth playing. And I really hope Bloober team is going to tell us that this game was a success, because I would really love for them to make remakes of other games, like Silent Hill 1 and 3. Why didn't they start with the 1? I don't know. And yeah, it's a really good game. That's all for now. Bye.